was it Western? Governor Green bound the state of Hawaii to the state of California and the state of Oregon and Washington, and they have what's called the West Coast Health Alliance. He has literally bound us by law. This West Coast Alliance is determined to maintain the full protocol of vaccines in this country, even though the federal government has reduced it by 50%. So this conversation, and that you see the demonstration of them, is a travesty that's affected for generations now. And it is time actually for the government to stop doing that and listen to real science rather than protocols and pharmaceutical industries and people in the medical field who they have not been taught. And as a matter of fact, over this next week, you're going to see various invitations to a couple of events that we have in Dale Bigtree is coming here to Hawaii, and Dr. Bartlett is coming here to Hawaii. There are going to be a number of events that we'll be hosting. We'll be working together with them. So I encourage you when you sign up at the front. By the way, who signed up for the campaign tonight? Okay? This is really important. You say, what are you talking about signing up? And what am I going to do? Give my firstborn? No. I'm just saying, if you sign up on the campaign, Gary Cordery for governor, you open the website, you scroll into the website a little bit, and you'll find a block where you sign your name and your address and an email. You do that and your phone number so that when we have events coming up, we can send you an SMS text message and you'll know when and where these events are. I also encourage you, while I'm on the subject, there's a donate button at the top, right? How many of you know it takes a little bit of cash to run an executive government campaign, right? So it's not like we all need to write a check for $6,000, although if you want to, you can. You should never underestimate the passion and the power of the individual. We're at a small home meet and greet like this, and a person walked up to me, an unassuming lady walked up and said, here, she handed me a check for $6,000. It was fantastic. Why did she do such a thing? She saw that it was possible to change the state and recognize that her donation was not a gift, it was an investment. You guys with me? That we would stand together and you can actually hit the donate button, and the best way to possibly do it is to hit a reoccurring donation for an amount, whatever that is. So I encourage you to do that. So let's have some questions and answers now. What we want to do is we're going to put this microphone down here, and even though it's going to require you to make your way up here to the front, I think it's the best way. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can just stand up and articulate and belt it out. So questions, any questions? And there was a question already. We'll start with that one. The question is, what are you going to do with the film ministry in Hawaii? So we used to have a robust film industry in Hawaii, right? Remember what I said earlier, that Hawaii has the worst business climate in the nation. Why is that? Because it doesn't recognize the strengths and the gift of the people that are here. It decides to determine winners and losers. So we put all of our eggs in one basket. How many have heard this before? Why are we putting all our money in tourism? We had a robust film industry. Why don't we open doors for that film industry to actually survive here? It doesn't take rocket science. This is fundamental common sense. Most government decisions require common sense and accountability. So if you want to have industry start here, you need to start with fundamentals. Like, first of all, does this work anywhere else? Think of that. Why don't we have energy or desalination in Hawaii? Every island in this chain struggles with the lack of water, right? And because we don't have enough water, our ag industry suffers, right? The cattle industry suffers. Who remembers dairy in Hawaii? Metal Gold Dairy, remember that? Not anymore. How about poultry in Hawaii? Who remembers that? Not anymore. And you have a struggling cattle and dairy industry here in Hawaii. Mostly because of government regulation and lack of water. And then finally, grazing land, which is being snatched up by the state. So for the same reason that the film industry is struggling here, agriculture struggles here. Government is not opening doors, it's actually regulating them to death. Next question. Yes, sir.
What's your stance on Hawaiian sovereignty?
Hawaii's a great question. Hawaii sovereignty. You know, honestly, we need to actually recognize that annexation happened and sovereignty is a part of the conversation, right? And so it's in my mind, it's kind of like a soccer game. It's a metaphor. In a soccer game, when you're on the field, the ball goes out of bounds. Have you ever watched a soccer game? And the opposing team grabs the ball and they start running up the sideline with the ball, right? And they try to steal way ahead, and the ref comes up and says, no, 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 no. The ball went out of bounds back here. Take the ball back to where it went out of bounds. This is what the issue is, in my opinion, with the people and sovereignty of Hawaii. We need to take the ball, go back, and the people who were there and participated in that, they need to be the ones that bring the solution. They need to bring solutions for the Kanaka and the Hawaiian people here in this land, and it should be their ideas, and they are going to have a cabinet position in our executive office, in our executive branch. We are already putting together a group of people who are talking about exactly what are the steps. Because honestly, a lot of the issues there is local Hawaiians, Kanaka, they can't get together and decide what should be. So sovereignty in Hawaii must be determined by the people from Hawaii. And an acknowledgement that the ball went out of bounds means you got to go back here and account. So, does that answer your question? No? Okay. So what's not working? You mean should there be sovereignty in Hawaii? Okay. Okay. Great question. So, you know, it's a great problem. You know, it's been well over 100 years, right? How do you take a state government who have this state government, right? A corporation. Hawaii is a corporation, by the way, and Honolulu is as well. And every community in Hawaii is a corporation. The kingdom is a completely different model. There's no easy answer. Honestly, if you try to reestablish a kingdom, the vast majority of people will rebel. They say, no, that's not happening. Right? If you ignore the kingdom, then they are equally. There's no justice there equally. That's why I'm saying you have to start in such a way where you bring something to the table and you present it so that people can get behind it. And I don't know if it starts with like a parallel government. I think it's a reasonable choice that you establish. So when you think about sovereignty in Hawaii, that means there must be a set of sovereign citizens who are willing to unite and have a common set of laws. They must have health. They must deal with healthcare, jobs. All of those components of a healthy society will function. Does that mean sovereignty? We're going to go back to a king? Is that what sovereignty means? Are we going to have a single king? Because right now, there's several kings. Several have declared, I'm the heir apparent. How's that going to work out? So is there a parallel government? I'm telling you, I'm willing to explore and have an honest conversation, a real conversation that pushes back against stakeholders. Because the reason we don't make headway on these most difficult issues is you have all of these stakeholders speaking into because they have a financial interest. And I would even start with Bishop of State. Right? You want to know what's wrong? You have stakeholders who are lobbying politicians to get their way so that they come out smelling good and being rich. And so you must bring people to the table who are willing to stand with integrity and courage and say, no, that is not just. That's what I think about sovereignty, and I don't know a great answer about it. I didn't speak about a single solution. I said I'm opening a door with principles. We must have a principled government so that people who have real problems can step into the solution rather than being told what is and isn't, a winner and a loser. Remember COVID. Essential and non-essential. Who decides such things? Question. We're getting pretty real now. I like the conversation. Yes, sir. Military bases in Hawaii. I can just be honest with you. The military is going nowhere. Right? But there are a lot of military properties that should be turned over right now. These bases that are comfort stations need to be turned over. And I'm thinking of like Bellows, that kind of a scenario. Those properties should go back to the people. And the military should be funding for housing off base. So that when people come and join the military service, which I thank God for the military, right? Those who are in the military, if they're going to live off base and they receive the resources from the government to pay their bills, the government should be building the housing for them so that they don't come into neighborhoods and the rent in the neighborhood goes to the roof because everybody wants to rent to a military person. Is this the truth? Well, let's just have a real conversation. Because if there's an unlimited resource from the military to write the check for the rent goes from what should be $2,500 to $4,500. And you're just looking for an officer to rent your place. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
There you go. Thank you kindly for taking my question.
Of course.
Gary, how do you feel about Sharia law?
All right. You know what? People laugh, but don't kid yourself. There are pockets of this country that are being governed by Sharia law rather than the Constitution. Because I can tell you what the Constitution does. The Constitution gives equal rights. That Iris's rights are just as important as mine, just as important as Stacy's, and just as important as yours. Equal rights, equal justice. It's much has to do with the sovereignty conversation. We don't have equal justice, but we're importing Sharia law. When you have Sharia law, you're going to be a woman wearing a headdress, and you're going to be owned. This is a form of slavery, and it's global. And don't kid yourself, there are entire continents who are falling to Sharia law. Has anybody been to Europe lately? There's people who say that UK and Germany and France are done. They've succumbed to Sharia law, and what the consequences are is individual rights are completely dismantled. You have no rights. You are owned by the man, women, by the way, right? You have no rights. Sharia law is a form of slavery, period. It's another form of slavery. And there are governors in this country who will not stand and call it out. I can tell you, we are a principle, this right here is a principal party that we will stand on constitutional principles for a constitutional republic where individual rights are more important than government's rights. That's what a constitutional republic is. Next question. Now come on, I know I'm not that good. You guys want some more meatballs? Wasn't the food good? Raina, thank you. Raina did a fantastic job. And give it up for the entire G4G staff tonight. When you came in, there was a greeter out there. They took your name. It was fantastic. All of the conversations are great. The stage and preparation, fantastic. But there must be more questions. Otherwise, yes, ma'am. I like this table over here.
Well, I just want to know when is stopping of building more homes?
Yeah. When are they going to stop building more homes? Yeah. Yeah. Traffic is amazing. Great. It's a great question. Density. It's a conversation about density, right? How many people should live on Oahu? Other islands don't necessarily face the same trouble that we have. As an example, on Kauai, 3% of Kauai is developed. 3%. The Big Island, even less. On Oahu, we have these sprawling Ho'opili, Koa Ridge, right? All 4,000, 5,000, 8,000, 10,000 tract homes. The west, the new city on the west side, all of that. I can tell you, there's a constitutional piece where people have the right to own property here. They do have the right. They do have that right. The question is development make sense? So when you go into like one of these large developments and you drive down the street, is there any street parking? No. You go into communities and there's no street parking, and yet we're supposed to have zoning laws and building laws, right? Building permit laws that require off-street parking. The idea of law is to bring order, and order releases liberty. If you have disorder and no liberty, then you have people doing whatever they want, right? And so it's a complex problem. Even as I'm talking, I'm thinking, wait, what about that? What about that? Right? So I actually am not in favor of saying you cannot build here. What I am in favor of doing is doing things like this. The state government says you can have Ag 1. Right? Ag 1 lot in central Oahu. It's old Dole property, pineapple field or whatever, sugar cane, right? Ag 1, the state gives you a lease for a 5-acre piece and it's called Ag 1, right? So you can have a 5-acre piece but you can only build one home, right? What if the state changed the property and it wasn't Ag 1, it was Ag 15,000 square feet or something like that, a different criteria. And so that you didn't have all the people jammed together in what's currently zoned for residential development, and that's part of the problem. But I also believe that part of the issue is the solution that I came with earlier, a housing solution for local people, right? If you have local people who can qualify for these homes, then you don't have outbound migration and you don't have people coming in here just writing checks for whatever they want. If people come in here with unlimited resources and they're going to write a check for a second, third, or fourth home, the tax on those homes should be a lot. They should pay a lot, right? So there's no easy solution, because if you say to people, you cannot build a home here, then you've essentially said that their constitutional rights to private property are somehow set aside, right? So you have to reconcile that right to responsible development. And responsible development means opening up more ground. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be in a certain area, but there has to be thoughtful development. That answer your question? Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah. I can tell you this, one of the things about the traffic, why if you have, so the Hawaii has the largest employer in the state of Hawaii is who? It's the state of Hawaii, right? If you have all these people coming in from the west side to go to work at 8 o'clock, and you have a major, and the UH system's 8 o'clock, right? Everything's based on the same track. I say if you're a state employee, you start at 9 o'clock and you work till 4:30, and you stagger traffic times. So like when UH is off season, traffic is bad, but it's not like when they're in season, right? So if you start staggering actually work times and traffic flow patterns that make sense, then you can somewhat mitigate the traffic problem. The other part is, we've been told forever we're going to build the second city down there. Well, then why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we using places like Barbers Point and those kinds of existing developments where there's a lot of property down there and it's unused? And the other problem is you have no industry. So if you don't have any industry for the people and they graduate from college, they want to go to work, where do they go? They go to Honolulu downtown, or they go to a medical facility. There are no jobs. Or they're in the service industry, right? We need to develop actual, real jobs for people who can live in their communities. And so when I talked earlier about desalination and energy, why don't we have desalination? Because we don't have energy. What would happen if the state committed itself to bringing energy to Hawaii? Right? Then you could actually take the energy and you could build desalination. These are important, long-time jobs, right? So you have to, it's like there's no single turn the key and everything's good. You have to address the entire gamut. There's no easy solution to the traffic problem. The train is not going to do it. Why we're building the train, I don't know. We had the bus. Didn't we have the bus? Why haven't we and have you noticed the buses are running around empty also? Have you noticed this? A bus drives by, it's got 13 people on it, right? What is going on in our society that says that the bus service is being restrained to drive people to the rail? People don't even realize this. The Department of Transportation is purposely reducing transportation and bus service to drive people to the rail. Rather than, let's reorder the bus and make them a little smaller, a little more agile, and more of them on the road. These are common sense. More questions? Breeze.
My table
Kim.
didn't know about
I
the
need to know
last
what
security department that you said was created. Can you talk a little bit more in detail about that? I know that I heard throughout Gary Cordery grapevine that only him and Kim were at this hearing where they passed a law now you can mention the name of the law, the number, that they can now take the most precious thing most of you own in Hawaii, which is your property, your house. They passed the law, and under our nose, but Gary knows more about it. Only him and Kim were there fighting in the court all by themselves. Last 2 years ago, last year?
Well, so Breeze is raising an issue that people don't realize, that the governor has a new agency. It's called the Agency of Biosecurity. Okay? It's essentially an agency that has been developed and has a great deal of authority. So within that agency, and you may have seen some of these things on the U.S. main, or actually in Canada, where if the Department of Biosecurity comes onto your property and they feel like there's some kind of an infectious disease, right? Any kind of an infectious disease. So if you're a cattle farmer or a pig farmer or a dairy farmer or that kind of an industry, and they find on your property one of your birds sick, they have the authority to come onto your property and to kill every animal on your property. You have no say. So we have this beetle running around killing all the cocoa palms, right? If the state comes onto your property and they think there's an infestation of your property with these beetles, they literally have the right under the law to seize your property. And they're not elected by the people. They're appointed by who? The governor. So the Department of Biosecurity is very similar to the Department of Sustainability. People don't even realize this. The 2030 agenda in Hawaii. The state of Hawaii leads every state of the nation with regard to the implementation of the 2030 agenda, which ultimately will turn into the 2045 agenda. But the 2030 agenda is designed to constrain your liberties and make you to comply with government agencies with regard to your freedom, what you'll buy, where you'll go, what you drive, how long you drive, and it doesn't matter. You already hear of other states implementing a per mile tax. You've heard of this? Look at your registration when you re-register your car, look at the little box at the bottom. There's a new box on your registration. It's the tee-up to ensure that they're going to charge the people per mile. So when you think about these agendas, and you can actually I would encourage you to go and Google, what is the transportation plan for Oahu or Kauai or Maui? Look at the transportation plan and you'll see right in front of you from the mid-90s, very detailed agendas, the 2030 agenda that's being implemented in law. It's been going on for a while. 5 minutes, thank you. We have 5 more minutes, which means we have 2 more questions. Janet.
This question is actually from Ryan. You're going to be aboard if you want to. He spelled it out for me. He wants you to know that autism prevalence is now 1 in 31 as of last year. It's a big mystery. The same government that can tell you what a mummy died from 3,000
What's the question? What's the question? What's the question? Yes, the question.
I'm getting to the question.
Okay.
Be patient, my man.
Okay.
So what he wants to know is, given the high number of kids with autism and the very, very high cost, it was estimated 20 years ago to cost $3.2 million to adulthood. What are you going to do? How are you going to address the educational deficit we have in this state? How are you going to help these children?
Okay, great question. So, autism is a crisis in this country, and it affects young men more than women.
Oh, yes.
So in California, it's now 1 in 13. 1 in 13 young men in California who are born and receive the full vaccination schedule have the side effects of autism at some spectrum, right? And the number, I've never heard that number. So in Hawaii, they lag a little bit, but not much, because we have the same aggressive protocol. You currently have in the state legislation the governor who is trying to take away your right for an exemption from a religious exemption or a non-medical exemption, forcing the people, the parents of this state, to force their kids to be fully vaccinated to enter public school. The consequences, vaccination rates go up and autism rates track it. So one of the things we must do is we must get honest about what's really going on. The Department of Health in Hawaii should be getting to be about the health of Hawaii, not the protocols to vaccinate the people of Hawaii. This happens, by the way, with the director. I remember Director Libby Char during the COVID. Everybody said, well, Libby Char said we had to do it. And she would just say, well, the CDC said we had to do it. But there were other states that said, no, We are not doing it. We believe in our natural immunity, and we believe in our body autonomy. We believe that we should know what goes into our bodies and have the choice thereof. So the Department of Health will be directed to actually generate health for the people. Like, how about healthy eating? How about exercise? Right? These are common sense, practical things that keep people healthy. Last question. 2 minutes left. Yes, ma'am. You're welcome. Here you go. Oh, here you go.
We've had an issue for many, many years now about the West Coast shipping people one-way tickets to Hawaii. I think we discussed a little bit about that a little bit ago. How would you, if you can, try to jump in and stop that from happening with these one-way people, if you will, moving into Hawaii and ruining our beautiful state? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Constance. You know, I mentioned earlier that there are states that are developing strategies to recognize when this is going on. And I think that people here, the people who tell me this is happening are people who are on the street. So people know who's coming here with a one-way ticket. They do know that, okay? So we identify them, get with them, and just send them back. You know, we live in a technical age, right? Like, I guarantee you, my cell phone, which is in the bag over there, is listening to my words and deciding what's important, right? We live in a digital age where people know information, and there's an advantage there, and there's a disadvantage. The disadvantage is you have the potential for government intrusion, right? The advantage is if you need information, it's also there. So again, it's just going to take the willpower, the political will to do that. So I just want to say thank you tonight for our time together. I hope that in our conversation that it wasn't just a declaration, that you actually heard that it is possible. That each one of you leaving tonight should go, you know what, I never really been involved in politics before. I've never actually got out and waved signs. I've never wrote a check. I've never told my friends. In fact, I've never voted. Who in here here right now, is going to vote on November 3rd? Let's see a raise of hands. Okay, that's fantastic. And may I just say, if there's a candidate in your area who votes your principles, it doesn't matter which party they are. You must vote the candidate and the principle. I have friends that are Democrats. If they were in my district, I would vote for them. It's not about the D or the R. It's about the principle. If we are a people of principle and we vote principles, we'll all live in abundance together. So I'm very grateful for your attendance and participation tonight. I think we're going to close it out with Kim's going to come on and close. We're going to talk about a little bit of the merchandise over here. There's some cool stuff. You need a good t-shirt right over there. Anyway, so thank you so much. Aloha.
So one of the best ways to advertise for Cordery is to get a t-shirt. So we designed the t-shirt. It has the name on the